You're listening to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, where we explore the intersection of people, business, and technology. This year, we're adding a new show to our lineup, The AI Advantage, to help you learn the skills you need to thrive in the AI era.
Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Florida in the United States. He works as a senior Microsoft Dynamics NAV and Business Central developer. He's an implementation specialist. He is always eager to learn new technologies and methodologies and share his expertise and insights. He aims to shape the future of enterprise solutions with Microsoft Business Central and helps clients achieve their business objectives and vision, which we're going to unpack on the show. You can find links to his bio and socials in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you for having me. Been looking forward to speaking with you.
Looking forward to have you on the show. Tell me, if you look across your career and life, what's been the most influential training that you've done? It could be a book, it could be a podcast, course, anything. What jumps to mind as you found whatever you learned as part of that, it definitely impacted you heavily?
Yeah, geez, there's a lot of training that I've gone through, and there's training in many different forms over the course of my career. I think the type of training that I found has been most helpful to me is the type of training that can reinforce a skill, whether that be through, some people call it muscle memory and learning and understanding. Muscle memory is not really there. It's just, you still have to go with your brain doing it. It just becomes a little bit more fluid. So the most influential training to me, it depends on the topic. I think a lot of times when it comes to technical training, I prefer to have more hands-on type training. Sometimes it could be a guided structure training. So for example, Business Central, which was what I specialize in, and even in development or even the application use, having a combination of exercise with a meaning you have a topic. Instead of just saying, hey, here's a feature, just have something, this is a task that needs to be done. So this could be in the written form. With something that you can follow through, and then something where you can go through and have an understanding of what you need to accomplish. Therefore, so if the objective is to, something simple like create a sales order and ship, products from a warehouse to a customer overseas, right? So you have a task you can go through, and then you understand the logical steps that you need to follow within the application to complete it. So that's the type of training that I prefer. I do also like to look at some, it's 2024, some of the online videos. And in the videos, I like the videos because it's a similar process. If somebody's having that same function, where you can pause and stop and replicate and do it yourself, right? But it's still an objective that you have for it versus just showing something that's clicking. So you actually have a process or an objective that you're trying to achieve and meet, which also helps me retain it. And then also, that's professionally. Personally, I like to read a lot of books. So the books will train me. Yes. I read a lot of books I'm actually reading a really good book now on why we sleep. It's a great book. But I like to read books like that to help you just even manage your daily life, how you can become, for lack of better terms, better with life and giving back to the community.
Interesting. If you look across your career, what's been the biggest inflection point for you where, you could point to a time or a place or a person and things changed from that point forward? Your career path took a new direction maybe, or it ramped up to a new level. Anything jump to mind?
I've had several inflection points, I think. And I think that it comes with maturity and age and just progression in life because I don't know if you can tell I'm a little bit older now than I was when I was younger. But when I first started my career, I had some great mentors that, I'll take it back a second. And, I get often asked the question, and a lot of people ask these types of questions, what would you tell your younger self? Right? And this will go back into your question. What would you tell your younger self? And sometimes I'd say I'd probably punch myself in the face and say, listen to more people, because sometimes when you're younger, you think, this person doesn't understand or they don't get it. But now that I'm on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of things that I heard from people along the way, the whole adage, had I known then what I know now, actually resonates to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the decisions that I made, thankfully, I became successful in my career. Maybe I would have done something slightly different, but would I be at the same point today? I don't know. But early on, I had some great mentors when I first started consulting that taught me, one of the big things I tell everyone today is I had an individual tell me, do what you enjoy, do it well, and the money will follow. A lot of people, their goal is sometimes to be, financial. I want to make this much money. I want to do this. But then it becomes a job and it becomes work. Whereas if you do something that you're passionate about, you enjoy doing it, therefore others see that you enjoy doing it and you do well with it because you want to do it. So that was a big inflection point early on. And then I think another inflection point happened, I guess, I don't know, midlife. I don't know if you can define the midlife. It's just, you start to realize just what's important. What do you stress about? What do you focus on? What's important to spend your time on? What's important to stress about? You can't stress the past because it's already happened. You can't stress the future because it hasn't happened yet. You can only worry about today.
Mm-hmm.
And, what do you worry about? And the thing that you're stressed about, how important will it be a year from now? How important will it be 6 months from now? So I just take a step back, and that's another inflection point. It was maybe about 7 or 8 years ago is when I realized that type of methodology. And it helped me also, again, continue to progress because I'm a little bit more relaxed and a little more sound in some of the decisions that I make.
Nice. Tell me your biggest contribution, life, career. What would you say is your, that isn't not what you'd say, but what kind of jumps to mind when I ask that question? What's your biggest contribution that you feel that you're most proud of?
Geez, see, these are good questions. And sometimes you can think the contribution where? I think everybody strives. I think, again, as you progress psychologically, it's again, you want to give back. You give back to the community, you give back to society, you give back to, everyone. So my biggest contribution is I've always strived to just help people understand whatever it may be, whether if to talk through and listen to them if they have a challenge and to work through them with them the challenge and maybe given a different perspective. And then to also just share experience and knowledge with others. Not that they have to follow it, but just maybe give them some insight into maybe looking at some things from a different perspective or understanding some experiences. I mean, I don't know if you can call that a contribution, but I look at it, it's a little bit deeper than saying there's one thing that I've done in my life that I'm the most proud of. But to me, it's more of just now understanding and talking with people and just helping people move forward. Whether it's through, mentorship, training, knowledge sharing, or even sometimes just listening to them vent.
Yeah. If you look at your career across NAV and Business Central, and if we just looked at this year, 2024, what are the key elements of your day in the life or week in the life? What are you generally focused on? What are you specializing in? What are you creating? What does it look like this year, the BC landscape from your point of view?
The BC landscape is constantly changing. So the day-to-day, the week, the time, there's always a different challenge. I mean, professionally, I work with helping implement Business Central implementations become successful. And that's through system architecture or design and development of extensions or even integrations with other systems to help them become successful. Also, with the changes in the product, I spend a lot of time, internally sharing knowledge because of the application keeps changing. So I keep up to date with the application, spend a lot of time focusing on what is new in the application because of the updates that come out monthly. And I know they have 2 waves a year, but all of the features don't come out in those 2 waves. Some of them come out monthly. So just trying to share with everyone so that they are aware of it to help become better versed within the application to point some of the things out. So my day-to-day is pretty much development, design, architecture, as well as sharing Business Central knowledge and within the whole kind of say ecosystem.
Talking about ecosystems, I don't work with Business Central.
That's unfortunate.
It's been one of those it's one of those Dynamics products. My career always, took me down the CE path, and that's been my background. And But of course, the landscape has always had the offerings from, AX, Great Plains, NAV. In the mix, I've been definitely across them, knowing their functional areas and things like that. What's the level of change happening? I see the level of change in my area that is happening, which is, this term of drinking from a fire hose is often talked about, the rapid rate of change. We've gone through 18 months to 2 years of heavily, as in from Microsoft, AI taking over everything and Copilot taking over everything, and really product roadmaps almost been deferred, but it's almost like it's starting, my observation, they're starting to get back to the pre-AI stuff again, because it's not like any of that went away. And sometimes when I look at Microsoft, I'm like, you've done this massive pivot in the last 18 months to 2 years. If this hadn't come along, what would the parallel, revolving doors type thing, what would have that journey been if we had just stayed the course for the last 2 years and AI hadn't entered the picture? Where would it be in our, product life cycle? But what's the level of change going on in BC, and how are people keeping up with it?
That is the challenge, and I speak with many on that. The level of change is significant because of a number of reasons. A lot of features and functionality added, which is, to me, is a great benefit to the application because it reduces the need to have, customizations is what a lot of people were, but to have extensions written. I mean, you still may need to have some extensions to satisfy those unique custom business processes that may not be within the core application, but at least they're adding a lot of features to the core application, which will help reduce and minimize that. But they're adding so many features with each of these wave releases. It is very difficult for someone to keep up completely, which is, you go back, you talk about you haven't worked with Business Central, you work primarily with CE. It's important to be aware of some of these applications because of the integration and the talk with them. But in order to excel in an application, you have to pick what's important to you and pick what you want to focus on. And you talked about like even the product roadmap with Microsoft. I mean, I think product roadmaps are difficult because you can't predict the future in a sense. So you can put a roadmap out, goes back to what I mentioned about the future before. You can put a roadmap out a year from now, 2 years from now, which is something that you would like to do. But if there's a pivot in the world, I guess you could say, of focus or something happens that becomes important, whether it be regulatory, whether it be just how individuals think something is important, or a new technology gets introduced, such as AI, you may have to slightly pivot from your roadmap because that's important to the success of your product. So it is like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information coming through. How do you keep up? You can keep up. I think, to me, you have to keep up. You just have to keep up with finding the source that's going to give you clear and concise. Thankfully, Microsoft from the Business Central side has been doing wonders with the documentation and saying what's new, and then picking what is new and what you would want to explore and understand, and picking out what is key to the success of what you're doing, because the application is growing, and I'm sure even like with CE or some of the other applications, it's just growing. It's rapidly. So it's just a matter of picking the pieces of it that you want to know, but also maintain awareness. So if you do come across a situation when you're working on an implementation or somebody asks a question, at least you can say, they did add this. Oh, I recall this. And then you can go back and look at it and investigate a little bit more detail when you have it. Because if you try to keep up with everything and master everything, I don't think you'd ever sleep.
In your perception, where does BC sit in the Microsoft landscape from their field sellers' perspective? And I ask this because I've seen over my career, phenomenal growth in the number of folks now in the field selling Power Platform, selling Dynamics 365 F&O, selling Dynamics 365 sales, service, field service, etc. I don't know if I know a single person in Microsoft that is tasked with selling Business Central, or I've never come across them for whatever reason. And so my question is Business Central really 100% partner-led initiative, in that it's the partners that go out and sell it and implement it? Or are you aware of folks in Microsoft, and I talk about the Microsoft field as opposed to the Microsoft engineering, right, that build the product, But are you aware of folks that have a KPI, a metric to move BC licenses?
I'm not aware of that, as if there's individuals that their sole function is to sell Business Central. I am aware of individuals that are there to support partners in selling Business Central. So from my perspective and from what I'm aware of, and again, it's just my awareness that it's partner led. I mean, customers, obviously, if somebody finds it, they can go online and they can order it. They'll still get, there's ways that they can get there, but it's primarily partner led, but Microsoft supported. And what I've noticed, a big change as Business Central becomes more and more popular, Microsoft has really gotten close with the partners, as well as even talking with some of the customers to support with some of these implementations. And it's almost different than some of the other products because you can buy Word, you can buy Excel, but you really don't get to talk to them. But now, if you go to conferences or if you even send them emails, they'll interact with you from the engineering team, to help give you support that you need. So from what I see, they are there more to help support the partner sell the product and then also support the product to make the product better for the customers that use it and also help with the customers as well. So it's the partners to be successful selling it and implementing it, and then also the customers to be satisfied with the application they have. So I see it more as a support role with here's the collateral, here's the information. If you need some help, somebody in the room with you to talk about, if it's a large scale implementation or something else, they would support you with it. It is funny though. I hear commercials, I listen to finance news or whatever, you hear commercials for some of the other products. Then I'm waiting for the day that I hear a commercial for Business Central, or I hear a commercial even for FNSCM. I think that's what they call it today, or something else, because you hear some of the other applications, right, that are sold from the ERP space. And, one day I think they'll be there and then say, contact us, we'll get you, a partner or something. So.
Interesting. What is the core underlying system that BC sits on? And what I mean by that is, in the CE side, we have a thing called Dataverse. And Dataverse is not just storage; it's a multi-storage technology. It's Cosmos DB, it's Elastic SQL, it is Azure SQL, it is blob storage, it is compute, it is automation, as in workflow compute, it's front-end compute, it's scalable. That is how we define Dataverse. What's the equivalent for BC?
Well, with Business Central, you have two options with the implementations at this point. You can use Business Central Online, which is hosted in Azure from Microsoft, or you can have Business Central on-premises. Business Central on-premises, which would run on someone's local hardware.
So what's the database they're installing?
Locally, it would be SQL. It's a SQL database as the backend for on-premises, and some individuals have on-premises installation that are hosted elsewhere. As far as I know from sometimes, from the conversations that I had, of course, I'm not with the engineering team. Azure SQL is going to be the backend for the data for Business Central Online. And then with all of the compute and all those other pieces with it running in Azure, you get the advantage of that as well. They do have some events to, they're starting to branch out to allow some interaction with Dataverse as well. But primarily now it's, Azure SQL as far as I know.
Is there any kind of, another thing we hear a lot from our side is the integration with Fabric and that, one lake type story and, making the data that would sit in BC available to the wider org. Is that something you're coming across on your side of things, or is it a different size?
They're starting to get into that. There are ways that you can have some of that information available, which is important. I think any application that you use, I don't think you'll have one application that's going to serve every single purpose. The applications are going to be a tool. And if you look at the whole, Dynamics 365, because even Business Central, they call it Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. It's a tool to serve certain functions, but now they've opened it up to work with Power Platform, like with Power Automate and, Power Pages and APIs, so that they're all interconnected. So to go over to your point of, there are some ways that you can get some of the information available in Fabric and also read some external data now with the release of some of the reporting that they've done from within Business Central as well too. So I don't think it's as integrated as maybe CE, but I think they'll probably get there. I'm sure that they have some underlying architectural challenges also because they're supporting both an on-premises version as well as an online version.
When they went and changed from NAV, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the concept of going to BC was that it was going to be cloud enabled from the get-go, and that was the big move that Microsoft was making. Rather than it being partner hosted or on-premise hosted, it would be in the cloud. At that point, did they fundamentally change, as in did they build it from the ground up to be a cloud first, where when we look at AX was kind of like virtualized first. It's definitely on-prem code base that was moved to the cloud, right? Where, Power Platform, for example, if you look in it's cloud native, right? It was born, as part of the cloud, something that, Salesforce really went to market in the early days. It never had an on-premise equivalent. What's that from a BC perspective?
Well, I can tell you what it appears to be. It appears to be that they moved it to the cloud, but I'm certain for them to have, the Azure connectivity, that they had to reconstruct some of the inner workings of it. I've had some conversations with some of the engineers about the underlying architecture, but what they've done with it, but I'm not fully versed with what they've done to reconstruct it. From the back end, from the application point of view, a lot of the same. They did switch the language from Cal to AL, which is similar in structure. And I think that's purposeful because they're continually adding functionality and features even to the language, to go back to the drinking from the fire hose. So not only having application changes, you're having development changes for those that create extensions. So I think that for change on the surface, it looks a lot similar, and it's gradually progressing to be more of a cloud-based application with support for online. Because even today, when they release some new features, as it is, some of the new features that they're offering are only available online versus on premises. So there's starting to be a divergence of functionality in a sense, but not completely. I mean, it's still the on-premises version is fully functional for an organization like anything else. Which do you prefer? Which do you use? Which better suits your business? A lot of people talk about, well, online's better, or some people will argue on-premises is better. But to me, better is a metric by who, for whom, right? It's the person that's going to use the tool, and what are their requirements and what do they need.
Dynamics Minds is one event you don't want to miss. Microsoft product managers and industry leaders from all over the world converge in Slovenia to explore the latest in Dynamics 365, the Power Platform, and Copilot. Expect 3 days of in-person community connection, trailblazing insights, and a location sure to inspire our creativity. Early bird tickets are on sale now, and podcast listeners get 10% off by registering via the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there.
That's interesting because in the CE world, right, which was 100% on-prem, as in where I started 20 odd years ago with it. But I never even hear the word on-prem anymore. For, 6-7 years ago, there was a massive kind of, when are we going to have on-prem parity? Because all the functionality was coming in with the cloud version and not on the on-prem. Now it's like, I can't even tell you if on-prem exists. As in, like, could I go and do a fresh on-prem build today? I don't even know. That's how far remote. I've never heard about. I'd never consider a new implementation being an on-prem. The largest or the only on-prem instance I can think of is something I did for the military that had to be on the hard network, which just to get it to the hard network took 3-year process after the software was built or tailored for them, to get it on the military classified network. And that's the last kind of on-prem that in my mind, that I can think of. Every implementation, I only hear of the cloud. I never hear Microsoft ever talk about on-prem these days. So it's interesting that it's still very much part of the BC landscape.
It is. I think it's starting to move more and more online just because of the ease. And I think I think they did a good job with this approach, because I think it allowed it to go to the cloud. They were able to work through the application on the cloud to see how it works with different, instead of saying, okay, here's a new cloud feature, everybody go to it, or, the cloud application, go to it, everybody switch, this is your migration path. You give them the option of on-premises versus, and again, this is my opinion, give them the option of on-premises if it suits whatever comfort they may have, or again, if you mentioned the military, in your example, there may be a security requirement where it is completely managed and isolated from any outside contact. I use the word contact. But also in that, those that started adopting the cloud, they were able to work through the application in such a manner that they continually enhance it and work with the performance issues, because that's a lot of things individuals had concern with, and kind of work out how it works with scalability, how it works with redundancy. And now I am seeing more and more implementations look for the cloud-based version of the application, just because it's easy. You can have the reduction of maintenance and management of network infrastructure, for example. With it being in the cloud, you can access it easily anywhere. And they have been adding, some great management tools. And security has always been a big one. So they continually enhance the security. Again, you have the benefit of Microsoft and the security for it too. So I think there will be a day where it will be predominantly online. That's, again, my opinion. I see it being just for the ease and even for them to work with the application, because if somebody's on premises, if they come out with a new update, somebody has to go through the process of updating that system. Whereas if it's online, just, schedule it, you go through it, test it.
Push a release.
You schedule it for live from your sandbox. So I'm a big fan of the online. Again, like I said, some will have on-premises needs today. Maybe in the future, those needs will change, but online is much easier.
What are your thoughts? And I'm going to pivot here. Not what are your thoughts, actually. How are you using AI personally?
Personally? I use AI as a tool. And how do I use AI? We're doing development. We've been using AI for development with GitHub Copilot. It's been great. AI, anytime you do a search engine now, even if you use Google, you get the AI summary at the top first, which gives you the link. I use AI as an assistant, which I think is where it's going and where it's becoming. Because if I want to draft something, sometimes I use it as an outline, and it will help get me something started. And again, I have the conversations about AI, and some will say, well, AI didn't do this, it didn't do that. But if you look around and say, it's like a tool, using a hammer, using an air gun, it's what tool do you use for the job? And if I can use AI, as I had mentioned, if I'm writing something or coming up some content to blog about or something, or even a session, maybe it gives me a topic or an outline to start with. Then my creativity, my natural creativity can flow from there. Or even some documents that I, will read through, which I found was great. I was away for a few days, had a lot of email threads. AI was able to say, hey, summarize these emails. And it gave me a good summary. And what I've done with that, again, with it being a tool, it's not always going to be perfect. I'll take the notes and talk with somebody that was on the thread, that was, managing it in my absence, and say, is this the gist of what happened? And most of the time they do say, yes, it's pretty accurate. So I use AI for that summary like that. Even some meetings, depending on the meetings, to, summarize the meetings or take notes for the meetings. And of course, who doesn't use AI to create pictures? Yeah, it's fun to create photos. So I use it in a lot of areas of my life to try to just even get some information or search information. It's a little bit easier now than it, again, web browsing, you can find the links, you can go to the links. But now if you, summarize a web page, even like I said, if you're using Google, for instance, for searching, Google will give you the AI summary and then the links to the actual pages that I can go to from there.
Any tools that particularly you talk about images, any tools that you prefer?
Tools for images?
AI tools, yeah.
I just use GitHub Copilot, and then I use Copilot. It's primarily using. I did have the good old ChatGPT subscription before, Microsoft released the Copilot. And now I strictly use GitHub Copilot and the Microsoft Copilot that's built in with Outlook and Teams and even the application on my phone, and then on the browser. Or on I use a Mac, so it has to be on the browser. If I do use a Windows desktop, I'll use the Copilot on the desktop.
Interesting. What excites you about the next 6 months?
What excites me about the next 6 months? I'm interested to see what's next with the application, interested to see what's next with AI and some of the tools, and then also just trying to relax. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't see it in my notes here. Do you have a podcast?
Yes.
Tell us about that as we wrap.
Absolutely. There's a co-host of a podcast named Dynamics Corner. Started with an associate of mine, became good friends over the years as well with Chris Rieras. We started the podcast, I think, about 3 years ago now, maybe. Time's a blur. And we started off just wanting to talk with members of the community as a sense of giving back and let members of the community talk about something that they're passionate about. We talk with partners, we talk with ISVs, we talk with customers, we talk with everybody, just to hear everyone's perspective on maybe the technology, the application. And we do try to focus on the dynamic space, but we talk about other things as well too. As far as implementations of applications, we have conversations about what it takes with the human factor, the people factor, and also sometimes the technical aspects of doing something within Business Central, creating something with Business Central, or some of the other tools. So we do quite a few recordings. We try to release one every week. Sometimes release 2 each week, but we do it for a lot of fun, and it's been great to have the opportunity to meet many, many people around the world through the conversations. Some that it's great to meet and see at the conferences. You get to talk with them, you become corresponding with them, and even become friendly with them. In a digital world, it's very easy to meet and talk and correspond with somebody regularly, and then finally get to meet them in person. You feel like you've known them your whole life. So it's it's this Dynamics Corner, and it's more of a community give back, as I guess you could say is what we call it.
I love it. We'll make sure we get the links to that in the show notes. So check it out. Brad, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.
Are you ready to accelerate your career in the Microsoft ecosystem? The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, created by Mark Smith, is your opportunity to create a personalized pathway to success. Join over 1,200 alumni from more than 70 countries who have achieved remarkable results, from promotions to new job opportunities. Take it from Nathan, who said, "Since completing the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, I've become an MVP in business applications and doubled my income." Or from Parves, who shares, "I've never felt as inspired or energized about my career as I do now." Sign up at arcor.nz365guy.com. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you'll get 10% off.